Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 53 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and this episode is scheduled for Friday, December 21st, 2018. I've recently had a few listeners to this podcast who aren't familiar with Draft2Digital hear me mention that I recently joined the team in the fall of 2018, and they'd asked if I might share a bit of information about what Draft2Digital is. So in this episode, I do just that. But rather than hear from one of us author-facing reps who normally speak in public about the team, I was recently in Oklahoma City, where Draft2Digital's head office is. Yes, I consider the work-from-home location that I am the Waterloo office, the only Canadian office. But I had a chance to sit down in the office with Aaron Pogue, President, Kris Austin, CEO, and Toby Nance, Chief Technical Officer, the three founders of Draft2Digital, to talk about the genesis of the company, these three friends working together to play off one another's strengths, as well as the strengths of the rest of that hidden team you never get to see. We talk about all that and more. If you're not familiar with Draft2Digital, this will probably help give you a decent introduction to the heart of what the company is all about. And if you think you know Draft2Digital, perhaps there will also be some information and some insights for you to learn even more by pulling a little bit of that curtain back on three gentlemen who usually prefer to operate behind the scenes and leave the spotlight for folks like myself and Kevin Tumlinson and Dan Wood. It's a wonderful chat, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Now, speaking of wonderful things, I wanted to bring up the sponsor for this podcast, which is Findaway Voices, and I'm really excited that as of this morning that I am recording this podcast, the Findaway Voices has just announced a great new feature called Voices Plus. In a nutshell, what it is it's an optional choice for distributing all your audiobooks through Findaway Voices as a single source. Now, to opt in, you can just check your audiobooks distribution page and click a few buttons and you're done. They still allow you the choice of distribution. So if you're already distributed directly to Audible, for example, through ACX, you can still deselect that. But this is an optional choice with a single source. Now, there's a few benefits that come with that. So I think this is one of the coolest ones. It's sort of a hidden thing, but it gives you peace of mind. So in addition to Findaway Voices being able to handle piracy protection and takedown requests on your behalf, given that they will know exactly who the files are being sent to and who's supposed to have your files. That's great. That gives you that control. But they're also offering 100 complimentary giveaway codes. These are for your core readers, your reviewers, your street team, the people that you want to get the access to that audiobook first, as well as getting reviews, etc. But it's also cool because it'll allow you to be the first in line for participation in marketing and promotional campaign opportunities, which I'm really excited about because there's opportunities for marketing for ebooks, but not for audiobooks. And as well as there'll be options and opportunities to preview great new features before anyone else. Kind of like that Authors Direct program, which is one of the things I got early access to as one of those lucky authors. So Voices Plus sounds like a multi-win situation to me because it's rewarding you with wide distribution possibilities and not really restricting you in any way. So a great opportunity from a great company that I've enjoyed working with, and you can learn more about Findaway Voices at starkreflections.ca/findaway. And now for a bit of a personal update. As mentioned, I was recently in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, home of the head office for Draft2Digital. It was great to meet the team that I only ever see online or communicate with via video chat and Slack. Well, of course, I do get to see Kevin Tumlinson and Dan Wood a lot because the three of us are traveling a lot to authors conferences, but it was great to see so many of the other folks that I rarely get a chance to see in person. Now, Liz came with me, and we both also got a chance to explore the downtown, the Bricktown and Midtown areas of the city, and learn that Oklahoma City is a beautiful and dynamic place. The people there are so friendly, so down to earth, so welcoming and hospitable. It was almost like I was in a Canadian small town. Maybe about one of the only reasons I didn't think I was actually in Canada is there was a distinctive U.S. Southern accent in the air. I did not hear people saying things like "a" or "a boot," or even "hey, take off, you hoser." And of course, people were fearful of the concept of snow, and yet they were okay with the fact that tornadoes happen more often than not. So there was that weird dichotomy. But the folks there were friendly and extremely polite and welcoming, but the one other thing that didn't make them Canadian was that there wasn't an excessive amount of apologizing, which is what you get in Canada as well. But I digress. Another surprising thing about Oklahoma City, and Dan Wood kept telling me about this over the years, was the incredibly delicious and diverse craft beers that are available in the city. Liz and I had the chance to visit several of the breweries and enjoy so many of those wonderful different beers in our explorations of this very friendly and hospitable city. And just got back late last night, and I am excited to be back home and up and running for the holiday season. In other news, I recently had a story appear in the pulp fiction style anthology called Amazing Monster Tales, and that's edited by Jamie Ferguson and Deanna Nipling. And now you might remember Jamie from episode 27 of this podcast talking about bundles, curation, and collaboration. And this anthology is definitely a wonderful collaboration, a unique collaboration that her and Deanna were working on together. Now, Amazing Monster Tales issue number 1 has... It's called Dawn of the Monsters, and it has 11 tales of monsters, mayhem, strange and inexplicable events, uncanny technologies, wildly improbable events, and more. Some monster you've seen before, and some of them you haven't. Some monsters are the good guys, and some are very, very bad indeed. So, I have a story that's called The Ritual of the Drawing, which appears in this anthology, and the story is set in the small town of Burkes Falls, where tradition is sacred, and the unwanted dregs of society are not a threat as long as the town has Mr. McNeil and the ritual of the drawing. After all, under the proper circumstances, a vampire is a wonderful thing for a small town to have. In other personal news, I'd like to thank everyone for the awesome comments about my recent appearance on the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing podcast. I was in episode 210, and I keep hearing from folks who quite enjoyed the information shared there. Thanks for letting me know via Twitter and Facebook and via my web form at markleslie.ca that you're finding value in the information that's shared. And I can't remember if I mentioned it or not already, but I also recently appeared in episode 5 of the Disruptor podcast with Joe Bard. And I love that Joe introduces me as a digital publishing evangelist. It really does feel that way when we look at the opportunities for authors that exist today that did not exist when I started in writing and publishing. And I'm so glad that people appreciate the sharing that goes on. But speaking of sharing, that's enough of a personal update from me. I want you to hear directly from the founders of Draft2Digital, from Kris and Aaron and Toby, some of the behind the scenes and the creation of this wonderful author first company. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
So this is something that I'm really, really excited about, is because not a lot of people understand the heart behind Draft2Digital, and you three guys are the founders of the company. Could you each tell me quickly just a little bit about the background of how Draft2Digital came to be?
Yeah, I'm a writer. I've been a writer since I was 6 years old. And I went to college to get a writing degree. And while I was there, I met Toby and Kris. And they quickly became my best friends in school. Toby is a world-class Python developer. And Kris is the most responsible person in the universe. So, and I'm an artist. So they were the kind of people I needed. And I would say in 2010, I was first really getting into self-publishing. I was following Joe Conrad's blog and just reading about the opportunities and how the digital market had changed the nature of self-publishing. And so I was seriously considering it. At that point, I was about 10 years out of college, and I had spent all of that time as a technical writer to pay the bills. And so when I decided to get into self-publishing, I was writing in Google Docs at the time, which stores the material in HTML format. And so I was reading all about ebooks, and I learned that they're also in HTML format or something like it. So I thought it would be really easy to make a really nice ebook out of my Google Docs. And so I went and looked at the best practices. And I was a professional technical writer, so I knew how to understand all of the style guides and preparation stuff. And using the best stuff on the market, I just produced a terrible product. It was horrible. But back in 2010, horrible ebooks were kind of the state of the art. So, but I asked Toby if he could help me out. I kind of described the problem, and he said, well, we should easily be able to do that. And as a favor in his free time, he made me software better than anything in the market for converting ebooks. And back then, the indie movement was all, free love and super, super supportive and social, and, we're changing the world together. And so I was part of that community. I was following all that stuff. And every single time I went to publish a new book, I felt just incredibly selfish because I was using this tool that no one else in the world had access to. And it was way better than anything on the market. So, and back then it was just a command line program that would convert a Google Doc that was very carefully prepared into an ebook. But even so, it was just so high quality, and it saved so much time and added convenience that I felt like everybody would like to have this. So I convinced Toby that it would be worth doing all of the work to make it into a consumer-ready product. And I recruited Kris to actually make a business venture out of this software. And we grew from there.
So, Aaron approached me. I was working in IT for years. I've been dealing with computers and software and servers, and that was my career. And then Aaron came to me with this proposal about this business thing. I have no business background whatsoever. But I just love the idea that authors really haven't been treated well for a ridiculously long time now, and that we actually had a way to help authors gain control and get their rightful place in the publishing industry, which is they're the ones that create the works. And then you have the authors and the readers. Everyone else in the middle is just kind of some fluff that helps them reach each other. And it was very compelling to me that we could make a product that gave authors power again in the industry.
I love that. And it's interesting that it started with Google Docs.
Yes.
Do you still write using Google Docs, Aaron?
I do. It's currently not really supported in our system anymore. So I now have to jump through extra hoops to prepare a book.
He says that looking at Toby.
Yeah. Over time, it ended up where Aaron is our first user and our least supported user in many ways, because he had lots of ideas of how he wanted it to work, which was not how we made it work for everyone else. And over time, his side of things have just kind of been left alone, and so he does not have the best experience.
I still have it on my on the roadmap to someday we're going to implement Google Docs support at Draft2Digital.
Okay.
And I will be the only person who's really happy about that.
It's possibly not true. There might be some other listeners to this podcast out there that said, wait a second, we want it too. Email support@draft2digital.com.
That's right.
So speaking of that, it's kind of important. And my first visit into the Draft2Digital offices this week was, I was so impressed because when I walked in, I saw the beautiful Draft2Digital sign on the wall and the beautiful blue color with the slogan, self-published with support. I'd love to hear a little bit about that approach, because that's been an approach that Draft2Digital has taken from day one.
Yeah, from the very beginning, we realized that we wanted to provide the best customer support in the industry. There's just no one could match us. Has always been our goal. It didn't matter who you were, you can't do it better than Draft2Digital, because we recognize that people come from all walks of life, and most people aren't very technical people, and self-publishing requires a lot of technical steps. And so it became part of our DNA that we are helping and partnering with authors to help them achieve their goals, whatever those goals may be. Most time it's just reaching their readers. Sometimes it's making a career out of writing. And we're there to partner with them to be their support when it comes to all these aspects of the industry that they just don't understand. They don't understand the technical ability of the tools. And so our whole approach has been, what can we provide authors to help them reach their goals?
I would say one of the major contributions Kris made was the strong emphasis on customer support from the beginning, making sure we put the time and money into that. From my perspective, I was all about the technology, just because that's what I knew.
And I kept explaining to Kris that this is not how the industry treats authors. I kept saying we don't need to invest in customer support because no one expects it. Authors are treated like dirt. And Kris's opinion was that was what we were here to change. So
yeah, that's very much proved to be the right choice.
Yeah.
And so the tools, I mean, when I think about the tools, so not only is this the best free, Word to Mobi/EPUB conversion tool on the market, and again, continually free. You can go to D2D, load your stuff, take it away, and go do whatever you want with it. You don't even have to publish a D2D, which is kind of groundbreaking. But then you have Universal Book Links, which is also another free tool. Where did that come from?
Universal Book Links started out as looking at industry problems and author problems. That's where generally all of our features come from. Looking at what are the things that are taking up authors' time, what are the best practices that we hear in the indie author community of people telling each other, do this, do that, and which ones of those are the ones everyone knows but nobody has the time to actually do in real life. Or where are the ones where I look at the best practices and I think that's not a very good practice. And so one of the things that was really a big deal 3 or 4 years ago when we first started talking about Universal Book Links was the problem of encouraging authors to go wide and distribute to lots of bookstores. But then most of the promotion for these books is done by the authors themselves. And so there was this just kind of ongoing conversation among authors of, do we need to put a link to your book on every single retailer on your author site, or every single time you post about it in social media? Do you have a link? Do you have a list of 20 links? Or do you choose some of the best ones? Or what most people defaulted to was just using the largest store, which was Amazon. And so everyone was just sharing their Amazon link, even if they had their books available on lots of stores. And so we saw an opportunity to make it easy for authors to choose what was the best way to do it. As we give them the convenience of sharing just one link, but with that link, we give readers access to all of the stores. So we solved kind of both problems at once. And then when we did that, we discovered it created all kinds of new opportunities. Now that we've got essentially a landing page for books and a single promotional link for our authors to share, then it made sense for us to make that landing page and that link as powerful as possible.
Okay, and I also love the fact that you don't discriminate against traditionally published titles. So you can use Universal Book Links for your own books published through D2D, your books published any other way, like through a traditional publisher or however you publish it, because it's about the books and where you can get them around the world. Yeah,
and when Books to Read is built in a way that the more people that use it, the more readers that use it, the better it is for all authors or anyone that uses Books to Read links. You need to get familiarity. People have to be familiar with these links and how they work and what they do. Also, the whole idea that when you click the link, if we already know what store you want to buy your book at, you don't ever even see a books to read landing page. All of that is dependent on the fact that this is a widely used tool. And so getting authors that use Draft2Digital or not use them, getting influencers, people who do book reviews, just anyone that has a reason to talk about or link to a book using this is a goal, because we need readers to be comfortable with the existence of books to read and make sure it's a trusted link. And so that's kind of how that worked out.
Well, that's fantastic. I think one of the time-saving devices is I used to have a special Amazon version and then a Kobo version, etc. And I was constantly updating my back matter. So you have the universal book links, but then you also have this amazing automatically updated back matter, which is, you know, the calls to action as well. It was built off the same principles, I imagine, right?
It was built actually a couple years before UBLs. When we had those also by the author pages, one of the very first pages we had in the whole system, so you're talking all the way back to the beginning of the company, we realized immediately that those need to link straight to the stores of where you're looking at that book. So if I'm at Apple, I finish a book, I got a list of also buy, there should be links there that take me straight to iTunes from my phone, and I can buy the next book. And so we wrote that technology way back then. And now that's since been converted to using UBLs. But even then, it still auto redirects to the store where you already bought the book you're reading. So from a reader's perspective, it still acts the same as it always did from years ago. But get that follow through from readers, grab them, get that impulse buy right when they get done reading your book, has always been a huge part of how we kind of design these ebooks. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And earlier, Aaron talked about, you know, the things that can save authors time so they can get back to writing and publishing, rather than worrying about other elements. And this week, as we're having this conversation, Draft2Digital just launched shared accounts. Can you guys tell us a little bit about this exciting new feature?
Yeah, account sharing controls is probably going to be most popular for our very high-end authors, but it's a thing that is very common on lots of internet services, but we don't see it very much in this industry. I think 2 of our major retailers support it for people going direct. But the goal of this feature is to make it easy for someone who owns an account, a user account with very sensitive information at Draft2Digital. That's primarily the banking information, but also the sales reports. But to allow someone to share access to their account with a somewhat trusted other party. So what we're mostly thinking of are author assistants or virtual assistants that our authors use. And we want to make it easy for them to authorize another Draft2Digital account to come in and modify their books, change prices, update cover art, things like that, but not go in and change where the payments get sent, or not even see the sales reports. So you could very easily work with a VA who never knows how much money you're making on your books, or, you know, like I said, can't take the money from your books, but they can make all the changes you want.
Okay, that is fantastic. And that is just one of many announcements D2D has made. We would go on for a couple hours if we talked about just what's been done in the last year. But the one last question for you guys, because I know you've got lots of things to get back to, is what's one of the things you're each most excited about we're towards the end of the year. What are you most excited about for 2019?
I'll start because it's my job to be excited about future features. For me, it's all about books to read. Books to read is going to be the solution for indie book discovery. And so, we're seeing some of the features we've rolled out in the last few months. We've improved the author pages and the book tabs, so to make those more landing pages and a place you can promote. But our plan for next year includes reading lists, which will be a way for authors to share, to essentially create a book landing page for whatever books they want. And then that's a launching off point from which we're going to start really making Books to Read a reader-centric site and making it a place for readers to choose to come on their own and come back to and find new books to read.
I'm excited about new distributors. We've been adding lots of distributors. We've recently added Biblioteca and Baker & Taylor, and we have just a line of more distributors to bring online with various libraries as well as others.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about DTD print, making it easy to get indie books into print in just much larger numbers than are currently there. I firmly believe there's no reason that self-published authors should not also own a giant piece of the print market. And the entire goal of DTD print is to help make that happen. And so that's just huge for me. And I think we'll be hitting that full on, obviously early next year because it's just about release. But I'm excited to see the growth of that and how it actually impacts the industry directly.
Wow, 3 things I'm also looking forward to, gentlemen. It's amazing. So Kevin and Dan and I get to stand in front of authors all the time and take full credit for all the great things that you and the other amazing folks behind the scenes at DTD do. I really appreciate you taking the time for people to actually hear some of the spirit and vision that has been behind DTD from day one. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
There are a few things I wanted to reflect on based on my recent trip to Oklahoma City and this conversation with Kris and Aaron and Toby. And my thoughts are somewhat intertwined as they have to do with personal connections in a digital world, collaboration, and being open-minded. I'll start with the idea of getting to know something firsthand and actually experiencing it in person rather than the preconceived notions. Take Oklahoma City, for example. I had these impressions of a place I had never been. I had expectations of a city I'd only ever known through imagination and perhaps a few scenes from movies and songs. I imagined Oklahoma City perhaps similar to the Wichita scenes from the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That when we took a cab from the airport, it might be like riding in Doobie's Taxiola. Or that the locals might be a little less refined than the Draft2Digital colleagues that I knew. Maybe they'd be like Gus's son Owen and his wife, the one who was short and skinny, but she's strong. All stereotypes, of course. But about the only thing real about a few of those stereotypes were the absolute down-to-earth friendliness and openness and welcomeness that filled the air. That stereotype rang true. I can't say that we met a single person who wasn't open, welcoming, and friendly. This is a rare thing for a city of close to 500,000 people. And you've got to love that. I'm so looking forward to returning to Oklahoma City. Because on top of that welcomeness and that openness, there was some great culture, the music, great craft beer, the historic and fun neighborhoods of Bricktown, of Automobile Alley, the local bookstores that we visited. All of it was fantastic. Such a rich and rewarding experience. Because there's truly nothing like experiencing the unique culture of a place firsthand and opening your mind to the possibilities. Now that relates to an element I talk about a lot, and that's the importance of personal connections. Yes, we live in a digital world. We have the ability to write and publish books and have them distributed to 190 countries around the world. We can connect with readers from around the globe and also other writers and other industry professionals with a few clicks of a button. But there's no substitute for in-person and direct one-on-one connections. That's why attending a writer conference can be so powerful. It helps solidify the relationships and the understanding and the openness. Now, as one of the remote employees of Draft2Digital, I have instant and easy connection via email and using Slack to talk to anyone else in the company at virtually any time. And there are even those fun water-cool style channels that we have in Slack for sharing fun jokes, cartoons, and videos, stuff like is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not? Star Trek versus Star Wars chatter. I don't know, the latest silly puns related to the time of year or the holiday season, or just plain old interesting and amusing things that we want to share with colleagues. We also have regular meetings and monthly director meetings and entire team meetings where information and updates are shared, and we can see one another via video. But being in town, spending a few days at the Draft2Digital office and having actual in-person kitchen and hallway conversations with my colleagues, comparing the different types of coffee that we each enjoy, because there are 3 different styles available. And again, there's the, which coffee style is better, or people don't drink coffee. What soft drink is better? No, I guess that's called soda down in the South and pop where I'm from. But hanging out with them at the Christmas party, getting a chance to meet spouses, partners, and friends, that was priceless. I knew the culture I was moving into when I joined Draft2Digital. And as much as I admired the company from the outside as a writer had used their services, I know that it was my in-person meetings with the folks from Draft2Digital over the years that helped me to fully understand the sincerity behind the great work that this team does. I'd spent time with Aaron, Kris, Dan, and Kevin over the years at various conferences. Come on, Dan and I karaoke together. That's our thing. We always do. Bare Naked Ladies, If I Had $1 Million. A fun opportunities in person. But even though I'd been in contact with them on an ongoing basis digitally, it was those in-person conversations. It was the in-person conversation that Kris and I had at NINC, Novelists Inc., at the end of September in 2018 that resulted in me joining the team. Again, that's the importance, the strength of in-person connections. It's so valuable, that in-person connection, because you can pick up on the subtle nuances that happen when people are occupying the same space. See, that's why this conversation with Aaron, Kris, and Toby was so valuable to me. To sit in the same room with these brilliant and visionary founders of Draft2Digital. To share industry chatter and thoughts and speculation, alongside trivial things such as a favorite Netflix show, or a recently read book, or that 1980s music video that was playing in the background. It provides context and texture to an ongoing digital collaboration that continues to bring innovation and great author tools. Seeing Kris, Aaron, and Toby sitting around a boardroom table or a lunchroom table was valuable to me in terms of further understanding how the 3 of them came together, played upon one another's strengths, and helped make Draft2Digital what it is. I'm sure in listening to this chat, you could pick up on how the dynamics have worked, each offering their own perspective, their own skills, their own value, into a sum that makes up more than the whole of its parts. It's the perfect parallel to the way that all of the unspoken folks you'll likely never hear from, or perhaps only rarely hear from, behind the scenes at Draft2Digital bring tremendous value. When I was in the Draft2Digital office, I had the chance to meet an Oklahoma City author, Kelsey Sterling, and invite her to come for a quick 10-cent tour. We've connected via online writer circles, but had never connected in person. And we perhaps only spent half an hour hanging out and chatting, but it was a great opportunity for me to connect with a fellow writer and also have that writer experience the awesomeness of some of the folks that I'm lucky to work with. There was value for Kelsey, value for me, and something else I'd forgotten until Wayne, one of the folks on the Draft2Digital development team, mentioned to me. Value for those who are working on those tools. You see, Dan Wood, Kevin Tumson, the customer support team at D2D, and I get to interact with authors all the time. But it's insightful and valuable for the folks working in the weeds and building all that cool stuff in the back end to get to see the authors firsthand and experience directly the impact of the work they are doing. We don't often get that chance. We also usually don't think about all those unspoken elements in our own author lives. All the folks who help bring things together for us, each in their own subtle ways. Think about the various multiple teams that you work with, the editors, the designers, the virtual assistants, the beta readers, the supportive friends, partners, and spouses, the various service providers, the distributors, and the retail partners you use, how they all make up a whole that is indeed greater than the sum of its parts. These things often work extremely well, and they blend together in something explained in the simplest terms as the writer's life. And we can sometimes forget the sometimes magical way that they all come together to create something as large as those visions that propel us to be writers in the first place. Sometimes that magic is all summed up in an extremely powerful and emotional moment when writers connect with one another at a writer's conference, or when a writer and a reader get a chance to meet and connect, even if it's just for the briefest of moments, in person. I've spoken about the almost mystical experience that happens in that ongoing dance between writer and reader. It's a great and intimate thing, relying on what Stephen King calls books being a uniquely portable magic. And while that connection, that magic happens when writer and reader connect, it's interesting to reflect on all the elements in the background that ensure that nobody puts baby in the corner and that we can all have the time of our lives during this dance that can be dirty, it can be wholesome, it can be often something we can't help but tap our virtual toes to, regardless of our own inclinations regarding singing or dancing in public. Because it's a brilliant song and dance that involves so many often hidden elements. The other dancers on the floor around us, the intricate orchestra, the many hidden folks behind the scenes controlling the lights, the building maintenance, all of it. True magic, when words bring people together in the most intimate way. So yeah, that's what I'm reflecting on when I think about this past week hanging out with my colleagues at Draft2Digital. That sometimes hidden spirit of teamwork, of collaboration, that allows us to keep bringing those words together, even when the actual act of writing is often an extremely lonely and solo pursuit, turning imaginary visions into words on a page. You are alone, and at the same time, you're engaging in the most fundamental and complex of dances with so many others. A fun juxtaposition to consider. Well, that's it for this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. Again, this is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Thanks so much for joining me again this week. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that you heard as well as the reflections. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd ask you to please leave a review of it on the podcatcher of your choice or share it with a friend who you think would get some benefit from it. Thanks again for hanging out with me this week. I look forward to connecting with you again next week in episode 54. So until then, here's wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.